Into the garbage chute, flyboy!
This is a rebellion, isn't it?
I call it aggressive negotiations.
The garbage will do!
Welcome to this month's episode of the Trash Compactor podcast, Star Wars from the female point of view. So we have some news. It's been talked about for a long time in rumors that there was going to be a new animated series after Rebels, and they have finally made the announcement that we will be getting that series. The rumor was that it was going to be called Star Wars Resistance, and lo and behold, that's what it actually is called. It's going to be premiering on the Disney Channel and later shown on Disney XD in the fall. So keep an eye out for that. It's going to be anime inspired, and some of the initial concept art, promotional stuff looks pretty cool. And the premise is that the series starts a few years before The Force Awakens and follows Kazuda Xiono, a pilot who is recruited into the Resistance to spy on the growing threat of the First Order. Some of the cast members of the show are Christopher Sean, Bobby Moynihan of Undercover Boss, Starkiller Base fame, Susie McGrath, Scott Lawrence, Myrna Velasco, Josh Brenner, Donald Faison, who was on Scrubs and actually asked a question at the Q&A for Rebels finale. He's quite the troll, that one. Jim Rash, Rachel Butera, and there will be guest appearances by BB-8, Oscar Isaacs as Poe Dameron, and Gwendolyn Christie as Captain Phasma. So that's going to be super interesting to check out. Was initially very hesitant about this news. I wanted something that took place in the years after Return of the Jedi. I was actually kind of worried that they were going to have something close to the sequel trilogy, and I feel like they really load up like these three eras, like the Clone War era, the Rebellion era, and the Resistance era. While there's time in between all of them that I would really like to see some stuff happen in, but we still have comics and books for that, and I think that we will be getting more from then. But yeah, this looks really cool, and anything that's handled by Filoni, I am there for, and this should give us some interesting stuff about the sequel era that we don't have yet. I'm really looking forward to this, and I'm also looking forward to the roundtable that we have this month. Solo just came out, so April Smalls and I sat down and we talked about how we felt about this movie. So why don't we just get straight into that?
Some people call me the space cowboy. Yeah. Some call me the gangster of love.
Welcome to this month's Trash Compactor Roundtable. We have a big episode as we have a new movie out. Solo hit theaters on May 23rd, and we're talking about what we thought about this new movie. I'm Emcee, and I'm here with
April. Smalls.
So yeah, Solo came out, and it has not met most of the expectations that, in terms of just financially, I think it was tracking at like $130 million, not billion. That would have been insane. Yeah, $130 million, and as of May 30th, it had taken in $115 million domestically and $197 million worldwide, because Star Wars doesn't do well overseas, really. And that's compared to a $250 million budget. So
Exactly.
it's not
probably the pre-reshoot budget.
Yeah, oh yeah, no, the reshoot budget, they reshot like 80% of it. So
Yeah.
they basically like doubled up on whatever they were spending.
However, I think it definitely had exceeded a lot of fan expectations. I haven't really read much of the critical reviews, but the reaction I've seen from fans has been from not bad to oh my god, I loved it. So, for a Star Wars movie, that's pretty good.
I think after The Last Jedi, and I say this as somebody who loved The Last Jedi, this is a nice breather. This is not something that's going to be super divisive. It's like, it's and for me, it's like, I didn't love this, but it's like, this was a really fun popcorn movie where I can just sit there and, like, be in this galaxy far, far away and enjoy an adventure, which, if we're going to keep getting Star Wars movies coming out twice a year forever, they're going to have to start coming out with movies like this.
Yeah. And there was a really interesting article in Forbes about whether, event movies can be carried by white men, which is like crazy that like that's the question, these days. But I do think, people were expecting it more as an event movie than as, a summer popcorn movie. This is the first Star Wars movie of the new Disney era to come out in the summer, right?
Yeah.
So that's really interesting.
Already at this point, people are like, it's so weird not to have Star Wars in December. And I was like, they've only had 3 Star Wars movies in December. It's like, this is
it's been 3 years though, so it's been like, I am kind of sad. I'm like, can they re-release something theatrically this December or something?
Yeah,
Like,
I'm sad about it. It's kind of
it.
nice. It's kind of nice to have this like secular holiday thing that everybody loves. I don't know.
Yeah, that is true too. Because I'm not super into Christmas anymore, so it's just like, hey, this was fun to have Star Wars at Christmas. So I wasn't actually super sad about Episode 9 being, well, I figured Episode 9 wouldn't happen, like, even before the director switch. I was pretty sure Episode 9 was not coming out in May of 2019, so I wasn't like, I was expecting it to be pushed back anyway. So when it was, I was just like, yes, more Star Wars at Christmas. It's going to be huge. Like, that's
I was hoping because of the reshoots, Solo would be pushed back to December, but I guess there's probably other like Disney film scheduling things they got to take into account.
I think they've moved. I think they wanted Mary Poppins to take the November, December slot.
That makes sense, I guess.
Yeah, and I think we got to talk about, too, these people who swear that it's doing poorly because of backlash for The Last Jedi, but I'm like, they're not taking into consideration that this is not a movie that a lot of people wanted to begin with. People weren't just like, it was announced, people weren't just like, oh my fucking god! People were just like, why? Okay? Like, and
even
it's
a
just
lot
like,
of us where it's like, okay, I guess.
Yeah. And it's not a movie the general audience was just like, oh my god, about either. So it's like, and because of the issues with the director change and those stupid rumors about having to have an acting coach come in for Alden Ehrenreich, it's kind of like, I think a lot of people were like, I'll see if my friends think this is a good movie.
Yeah. And I'm
so
wondering
word
if
of mouth, that's why I'm like, and I haven't posted about it on Facebook because I just need to be like, hey guys, it's totally worth going to see. It's fun.
Yeah.
Like, it's really fun.
And we might see that it's not doing like super huge numbers in the first couple weeks, but it might sustain itself a lot more than some of the more controversial Star Wars movies. Because there's a lot of people who I think are going to wait to see this to hear what other people say, and then people will be like, oh, well, it's just a fun movie. And I mean, like, my sister-in-law is, like, not opposed to seeing this. She's not seen any of the Star Wars movies, not out of any malice or anything. She just, like, missed them in her youth, and is like, there's a lot to catch up on, but, like, with this...
Wait, she hasn't seen any of them?
No, she hasn't seen any of them. It was actually really funny. The other day, I mentioned something... I asked her if she had seen Infinity War, and she's like, I don't, I haven't seen any Star Wars. And I'm like, oh my god, seriously? Oh, that was, like, so precious, actually.
Yeah.
I mean, apparently Phoebe Waller-Bridge hadn't seen any Star Wars when she auditioned, so I don't know where these people have been, but...
That happens, and it's so weird, but, like, not even, like, some person you were dating was like, you gotta watch this, babe, it's kind of...
Well, my sister-in-law is gonna watch them now that she's marrying into the family, because she's like, yeah, you guys are just way too into this for me to not know what's going on.
Another thing, too, with the time of year that it is, and it not being something that people super, super wanted to see, even a lot of, like, huge fans were like, I'm not gonna, like, interrupt my schedule with school, with work, with graduations, with, family stuff to do it. So I think it's just that it wasn't this hotly anticipated movie. They should have made that something they maybe should have considered, whatever. They were like, let's make this thing huge.
It's
whatever.
Also just coming like right after there's been a bunch of huge tentpole movies, you just had Infinity War, you had Deadpool 2, so there was a lot of stuff. Like, movies are gonna cost you like $30 a person. Yeah, and people aren't gonna go every freaking weekend. But I just can't with the people who are all like, this is the end of the Star Wars franchise, it's gonna die because Solo didn't do well. And it's like, dude, it's Star Wars, it's forever.
Oh yeah, people calling for like Kathy Kennedy to be like removed. I'm like, she just had 3 billion-dollar movies in a row. So maybe we should start talking about the movie.
I've only seen it once. I saw it on Thursday, the day before it came out.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
I saw it Friday.
Like I said earlier, it was a fun movie. There was some stuff that I really liked in it, but it feels like the stuff that I really liked in it wasn't around for too long. It's like every time like something like really made me sit up and go, oh my god, I'm interested in this, it's like, oh, now it's gone. Okay.
So yeah, let's talk, I guess first, just overarching, should we talk about plot first, or just talk about what we liked the most about it?
I really loved the movie, but that's because there's been some elements that I've been following it from in like pre-production for a long time, and that I had big hopes for, and they panned out, so
yeah.
And then some. Yeah, I don't know.
Well, I think in terms of plot, it's not the most complicated of plots. It's a heist, and nobody's...
God, though, because heist movies usually confuse the shit out of me.
Well,
so
yeah, I mean, it's
totally cool.
It's a heist western, and nobody's trusting anybody, and it's pretty straightforward. And one thing I noticed is that they hit all of the beats that you expect a Han Solo movie to hit, which is both good and bad. It's like, people would be really pissed off if they didn't show Han winning the Falcon, if they didn't do the Kessel Run, if you didn't see him meeting Chewbacca, all of this kind of stuff. But I didn't feel like with Han's story, they really went outside of stuff that... I mean, maybe it's because I'm really into everything Star Wars, and so I know both the Legends and the current EU. So there was nothing surprising to me in Han's story.
Yeah. I think looking at it from like an outside perspective, like if somebody is general audience, I think one of the maybe, like, 'cause it's not super mentioned about Han having been in the Imperial Navy, right? Like, that's not a huge part of just like your general, if somebody has seen TOT. Would they be aware of that?
No,
like that kind of thing is probably one of those things that made people go, oh, interesting. But it kind of also, it adds into some of the themes we've seen in some of the other extended canon, with you see lots of people who are just joining the Empire to get out of whatever situation they're in, which I thought was really cool.
I wish we had seen maybe a little bit more of that, and because it did seem to be just kind of like this blink and you miss it thing. I do think it was interesting, but it was it was another one of those things where it's like, oh okay, this is... I think it only took maybe 10 minutes.
I saw it was really weird, some complaints from people about it hitting all of those beats, and it's like, we know, it's kind of like with Rogue One. Yeah, we know that the plans were taken, but it's really cool to see how.
Yeah, I
thought it was cool, like, to actually get visuals on this stuff with how these things happen. Like the Kessel Run, I was like, that's so much cooler than like what it was always envisioned as. It wasn't like him just being like cool and being like, yeah, I'm gonna do this. It was like, holy shit, the whole time. There's a like wormhole and a tentacle monster.
Okay, when I first saw that thing, I thought it might be a Purgle. But then I was like, no, it's too mean. And I actually have seen a lot of people suggest that it might have been the new canon version of Abeloth, which I thought was kind of cool.
I don't know what that is.
I don't know what that is.
That's from the Legends continuity. It's basically like this dark side monster thing. they couldn't win either way in terms of those beats, because either they put those in and people are like, oh, it's so predictable, or they didn't put them in and people would be like, where is this stuff? Like, why you have to do this in a Han Solo movie? So I think they went the right direction. I would have liked to have seen them put a little bit more in terms of, I would have liked to have seen a bit more development myself. Yeah, I don't know, because I mean, it's the whole idea of, you know, Han's a rogue, but he's got a heart of gold underneath, and it's like, we already had 3 movies that like taught me that Han Solo was a rogue with a heart of gold. Like, we could have delved a little bit deeper.
I thought it was interesting to see him trying so hard, like, you know, like realizing that this has been a lifelong struggle for him. To, you know, get over having this big heart. It was kind of, yeah. That tied it, of course, directly into, you know, what Snoke says to Ben Solo.
Oh, yeah.
In The Last Jedi. It's like, yeah, this is a family trait.
I did think Solo, we knew that. I think Solo, as a film, did make that, like, more explicit. Like, there's been a lot of, like, analysis about how Han isn't actually smooth, or, like, the PR he tries to put out about himself.
Yeah.
Like, most of us think that, but this explicitly, like, showed it and showed, like, the workings of it, like, the inner emotions about it. And I think that was good, that it was, like,
that's very true.
More explicit. I mean, I enjoyed seeing it made more explicit.
I also did like that they really canonized that Han shot first.
Yeah.
Because it's just like, this is what he believes, he shoots first. I would like to just shout out how much I fucking love Chewbacca in this.
Yes.
Chewbacca, I love him in the original trilogy, but in the original trilogy, he's Han's accessory. He's kind of there and he does some fun stuff, but he doesn't have much of a character. This, I really felt they've started to develop a character for Chewbacca, and it really came out in this movie.
Yeah, and
he got his own theme music.
And it's so important because he is, if they don't bring Lando back for 9, he's the last of those characters.
Oh,
you
man,
know? That's important. And I just loved how he and Han, like, because Han treated him like a person immediately. You know, he's about to be eaten and he speaks his language to him, you know? And like, and then he asks him questions about himself, and like, it was just, you know, they showered together. You know, but it was just like Chewbacca was like, and it was just so cool that Han instantly was just like, this is a dude, you know, this isn't the monster or beast that's trying to eat me. And I loved that connection being made right away. Yeah, that they were pros. Yeah. And
the movie did such a good job of just like really underlining that all non-humans are like people, you know, and they didn't just like say it, they showed it with Chewbacca.
And of course, the other character who we had previously met, Lando, played by Donald Glover.
What a good job. Like, yeah, because I'm thinking about it too, because like, I don't know if he and Billy D had some conversations, right? But still, you don't have a lot of screen time for Lando to study like Alden would have had with Han.
Yeah.
He obviously has more screen time. Donald Glover has more screen time now with Lando than Billy D. Williams does. So that's pretty cool that he was able to just seamlessly, like, he didn't, it was just like, I totally believed him. I believed Alden from the beginning too. Like, I know there's some people who still say don't believe him. I was in. Like, when he first started talking to Qi'ra, like, I was just like, oh, yeah, that's Han, like, at 19 or whatever, you know?
You know, I think I believe Donald a little more than Alden, but they both, I think, I could buy both of them as younger versions of these characters. I've actually heard some people complain that they feel that Donald did too much of a Billy D. Williams impersonation. I don't agree with that myself.
I got that feeling a few times. Like, I felt that there was some stuff that was a little surface. But again, I think he had the advantage that he was more able to make the character his own because of what we have and what people have seen of Lando, you know? And so, Han is J. W. Williams, he didn't have a lot of screen time, you know? Though he definitely created a hugely iconic character from that little bit of screen time, you know?
Han is, I think, hugely iconic, but his mannerisms are so much more subtle, while I think Billy D. Williams is a little easier to impersonate, and part of people saying it's like, I think he did too much. There were a couple moments where it slides into parody territory, but I mean, you think about his cadence and him wearing the cape and everything. It's very
well, and because of Billy D's type, and Lando's type is a very like 70s, early 80s sort of like type of character too, you know. So he kind of embodies that. And I think, you know, if you look at it too, again, like you're watching a biopic and not, you know, then it's kind of like easier to get into both of those characters, you know.
I was actually thinking a couple of times, I was like, in my head, it's like, okay, so is this like a holodrama in the Star Wars universe that are, you know?
See, that's, I love, like, I love doing that with things in canon that I'm a little iffy about. And canon supports you doing that, to be honest.
Yeah, and I think that that's one thing too, and it was kind of a brilliant thing that they both did at times, is that I don't think they were truly looking to do impressions, but interpretations, because you are very different. Like 10 years, especially those 10 years in your 20s, or I don't know, how much older is Lando than Han?
I think Lando's supposed to be 26 or 27.
Okay, yeah, so, you know, yeah, in your 20s to your 30s, like, you do become a very different person, especially with all the shit you're going through if you're in the middle of, like, a galactic civil war that's heating up and all that, you know. So yeah, it's like I think that they both took a really good approach to these characters, and I think it definitely worked out.
Yeah, and I mean, Lando blogs, so
It's amazing.
I
was impressed with how like state of the art and good his holo recorder was.
I know, right? Yeah,
most of the tech is sort of junky, and his was like nice. So I was like, oh, so this is, you know, what we see if it's not like, you know, 40-year-old tech.
Yeah.
And it's brand new.
Lando was another thing where it's like, I really loved it, but he seemed to, I mean, he did have more screen time than Billy D. Williams' Lando, but I could have had an entire movie of him, and I would have
definitely
been happy. But he just kind of came in and out of things. And,
yeah. My favorite Lando moment was whenever he just left. I was just like, he knows when to fold his cards. And he just was like, fuck this, I'm out. And I wonder if he started the like takeoff sequence whenever he saw that the Cloud Riders had arrived, you know, or whatever. He was just like, yeah, I'm done. It's over. I'm out. Like, this is
shit,
I don't care. I don't even care. I'm just escaping with my ship and my life. We're definitely not getting these credits anyway.
Yeah.
So, like, I loved that. It was just like, and I don't think Han blamed him either. I think Han was disappointed, but he was just probably like, yep.
Yeah, well, I mean, when they meet up at the end of the movie, there's no animosity there. It's just kind of like, hey, and you know, they do that whole, you know, I'm gonna go for you, but instead I'm gonna hug you. I mean, of course, we find out it's because he's also trying to get Lando's, you know, cheating cards or whatever. Yeah. But I think he genuinely meant it as well. So
with your talk of like in Lando coming in and out of the movie, I feel like the whole movie was structured really from Han's point of view. So we meet people, for the most part, exactly when Han does, and we say goodbye to them pretty much when Han does. So like that's a pretty straightforward structuring, but it can be frustrating if you want more of those characters or to see more of like what they're doing off screen, you know?
Yeah. And part of my problem with this movie has always been that I wasn't super into the idea of a Han Solo movie, while I felt like a lot of the people around Han Solo, like Lando, Chewbacca, I was more interested in movies about them. Mm-hmm. Because, I mean, I'll admit it, it's like, even like in the original trilogy, Han Solo is not my favorite character. He is kind of like, out of the trio, I much prefer Luke and Leia. I still adore him, but it's like, I wasn't really there for a whole movie about him. Alden did a great job, and I think the movie was fine, but I might have preferred a Lando movie.
See, after seeing the first two installments of the sequel trilogy, I was really interested in a young Han Solo movie because I felt like I wanted to know a little more about that side of the family.
Yeah.
Like, I really wanted, you know, because, like, what's the Solo legacy? Like, what does that? And,
Apparently not much, since an Imperial came up with the name. I'm sorry. I do get what you're I do get what you're saying though. We already know so much about the Skywalker family that it's nice to know the Solos.
What do you guys think about, apparently they adjusted Han's age in canon.
Okay, what?
Yeah, like, well, Wikipedia, I don't know what the source is, if it was from an official source or not.
It's the visual guide, which is waiting for me at the library. But
his age has been adjusted to where he was born 32 years before the Battle of Yavin instead of 29.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm fine with it. I mean, I'm a little bit happy about it just because from a fandom wank perspective.
Yes. I think it's funny mostly, and it's not just the whole age gap being more than the Rey and Kylo age gap thing, but from the perspective of now he's closer in age to Anakin.
Yeah, he was born the same year as the blockade on Naboo.
Yeah.
Really?
So that kind of makes me laugh because I've known people who have spouses who are closer in age to their fathers than themselves, and it's always so awkward, So yeah, that was one I thought, oh, that's funny. Okay.
I did not know that, and it doesn't bother me at all, because I mean it's 3 years,
Yeah. Well, I think the conjecture is just that since Alden is 28 now, he would have been 26, 27 when he shot the movie. He would have been playing 16 and 19 if they'd kept his age the same.
Mm-hmm. So instead of 19 and early 20s, which they did a pretty good job, I thought, with young Qi'ra and young Han. For that short amount, I couldn't have bought it for a whole movie, but for that short amount of time, I bought them as teens.
Yeah,
they did a good job with their acting and their makeup. So.
Yeah, and the lighting. But I think a lot of it was physicality too. They just had these big dumb looks on their faces that were great.
Yeah, they were babies.
Yeah. They were just kind of wide-eyed and what? What the fuck's going on?
I think Han's upbringing, the flashback at the beginning to Corellia, makes it really interesting when we look at his connection with Rey in The Force Awakens.
Yeah.
Because their upbringings seem to have been very similar. I mean, Han's was probably a bit rougher because it's involving
and more communal.
Yeah.
It's a really densely populated planet as opposed to the others, but Lawrence Kasdan gave Rey and Han the exact same line a couple times.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I noticed the other orphans talking about portions, and it's where have we heard that before? And I think it was
somebody called Proxima Fagin, right? Who called her Fagin? Somebody did.
I called her. I called her Worm Fagin. Lady Proxima.
Totally is. Yeah.
She was there. I loved her as a character. Just for a short thing. I loved her.
That was great. I thought that was a very good established. We knew who she was immediately. Yeah. We're I know you, bitch. Sure. Yeah. And I just oh my god, the thing with the rock,
the thermal detonator.
Yes, and I love that because it's it's a callback to Leia in Jabba's palace, but Leia literally has a thermal detonator.
It made me wonder. It's has Han when they were going to Cloud City, did Han tell her that story, and that's where she got the idea to bring an actual thermal detonator?
Just gonna say exactly, that totally happened.
So we should probably talk a little bit about the new characters who are introduced into this, because there are some huge characters that are introduced to this. The first one, I think, being Emilia Clarke's Qi'ra.
I was pleasantly surprised. I'm still not a huge fan of her acting, but I thought some good things happened.
She was passable for me. I mean, I have seen her in a bunch of different things, and she didn't do anything that made me go, oh my god, she's so fantastic. And it's yeah, okay, you earned your paycheck. I know I'm sounding really patronizing, but
well, and there's still that thing where you're looking at if you guys hadn't teased us with these ideas of Tessa Thompson, we might be a little more generous. I don't know.
I don't know. I mean, I was really kind of expecting to just be oh yeah, I was pleasantly surprised by how much more engaged with her I was than I expected to be. And I mean, I've seen Emilia in a couple things, and I don't think she's a brilliant actress, but I thought this was some of her good work, better
Yeah.
work.
Yeah, and she does have this sort of, there is this thing that she does with her smile and her eye that was like really touching at times.
My favorite moment with her is when, like, one of the a moment I can't stop thinking about is when Tobias and Han are arguing about, giving the coaxium to the Cloud Riders or not, and Enfys Nest asks Amelia, they're watching them, and is like, "What do you think they're saying?" And Qi'ra is just like, she's like, he's going to try to help you, but like the way her face is, like the tightness around her eyes, and like it's like she's like dying inside, like she's just
that was
gone
good.
dead inside because she knows what it means. And I like that. I think I liked a lot that she was a lot more emotionally readable than the marketing made it sound like she was going to be.
Yeah, they were like femme fatale from a noir, which, some of her styling sort of matched that, but
yeah, visually, yes, but I didn't think the acting was. But like, she was still morally gray enough that I was as morally gray as I wanted her to be, I guess. So
yeah,
I mean,
everybody's.
I wouldn't even call, based on what we saw in the movie, it's like she kind of looked like a femme fatale. To me, she came off as really young, and I enjoyed that. That, she seemed to be, very confident and trying to fill this femme fatale role, but she was just some, like, orphan kid from Corellia.
Kind of like Han. Like, they're both, like,
trying to fulfill a role and not succeeding. Like,
I'd been really worried that they might have Qi'ra, and I can't remember what Paul Bettany's character's name is off the top of my head. Ryden Voss. I was afraid that they were going to do, like, some sort of skeevy romance thing. And a couple of times there were some, like, moments where he's, like, kind of very close to her, and they could have suggested that. But I was glad they, like, stayed totally away from that. Because it did kind of...
implied.
I disagree. I think it was implied as a strong possibility without being, like, explicitly being like, yeah, this is what happened.
Yeah. Well, okay.
It was more, I perceived it as, like, potentially more sexual than you, I think.
Yeah, I definitely got some of those vibes when it was just like and it was that sort of how much is she actually into this and how much of it is her choice sort of thing.
Well, I think that's what I mean, that she wasn't, like the, if it was going on, it definitely was not her choice.
She's not hot for him, basically, is what you're saying.
Yeah, basically, yeah.
I thought they did a great job of introducing that sexual element without just reducing her to, like, a sex slave. Like,
He definitely appreciated her. Like, I don't think he would have her around if she wasn't good at her job.
Yeah, I think I like that it was more like it didn't go either way. Like, I think I've seen a little discourse about how, like, oh, she's not a victim, she's a survivor, and it's kind of like, you can be both. Yeah, and, like, I had people being like, ooh, she's not actually, like, a damsel. She she wasn't just coerced into, like, sex work. She's an assassin, and I'm like, having to be an assassin is not, like, a victorious thing.
No,
it's not a triumphal thing.
Yeah, like, she kind of, like, exuded a sort of, like, she was a caged animal in a lot of ways,
Yeah,
but, like, one who sort of got that whole learned helplessness thing in some ways, right? Obviously she's not helpless, but there was some sort of, like, fatalism to it where she's just sort of like, this is who I'm going to be.
Yeah. I don't know. I thought she was really
available to me.
She was really nuanced, and I thought they could have, like, there were so many ways felt like they could go wrong with writing like Han's first love, childhood sweetheart, like, and they really, I think they avoided all those for me. So
yeah. Well, she didn't betray him. She flat out didn't betray him, really. She went off on her own, and she didn't die.
She saved him, really, because if he had come with her, at this point, Darth Maul doesn't know who he is.
Yeah, but she didn't save him by, like, giving her life for him or something.
Right, which is amazing.
I mean, literally, by literally giving up the ghost.
Yeah, I was so worried about that, and I'm like, I'm glad she's still alive out there, because also it's just like, yeah, we can have more stuff about her. Like, she is really interesting, and it's just, like, wow, that was a choice she made that was pretty huge, and it was a familiar looking choice. Because I do like, there are some parallels with, like, especially that last scene that happens, like, that parallel the throne room scene in The Last Jedi, which I thought was, like, super interesting. You know, down to, like, the fake out of, yeah, no, I'm not going to actually kill this person I care about. I'm going to kill my boss. So what do you guys think about that?
I mean, I just agree with you. I see those parallels, and
I'm not sure what they're trying to say with it yet, because I've seen, you know, there are a lot of people who are excited who are like, no, this means that, you know, Rey and Kylo is a way to, like, fix this relationship or whatever. And I'm like, well, it also could mean that, you know, some people just aren't looking to be saved. That's another way you read it. Like, I don't know what they're saying with it, you know?
I'm a fan of Star Wars, you know, like, George's, like, it's poetry, it rhymes. The thing is like, that about poetry is that one thing can have multiple rhymes, and it's not, and that's what I love about it. It's just, I just like the poetry of it, not meaning, you know, not being like, this is what it means nailed down, you know? And I don't want to make, I love that this anthology movie came out at the same time as the sequel, because it really informs Han as a character, and it's more world building and stuff, but I don't like to make it about the sequel trilogy.
Fair enough, yeah.
You know,
just thinking about everything with Qi'ra's storyline and how everything goes in the end. And I'm thinking, obviously, we're going to get more stuff with her eventually. And people have said, are they setting this up for sequels? Are they setting this up for stuff in the EU? Well, first of all, I would just like to congratulate Lucasfilm on having huge cojones for putting in the twist about Darth Maul. Because there's been no hint of that in the movies so far, and that's certainly
like, in terms of
certainly it's been in the series and in the books and comics and stuff, but that's all ancillary stuff that, you know, while it is canon, a lot of people don't read it, and so they just trusted, and they didn't put any hint about or explanation to it in this movie. They're just like, here it is, here's Darth Maul, and they trusted people to either know about it or to go and find out about it.
Which is cool, because then that gets people interested in some, you know, stuff that they might not have had any idea about as far as the other extended canon stuff, which is cool.
But the point I was going to make was, there have been some suggestions that they might make a Solo sequel. I don't know how that's going to turn out now with the box office as it is, but personally thinking about it, I would love to have a book that happens sometime after Return of the Jedi that has Qi'ra appear in it. And that have it be the first time that Han has seen Qi'ra since Solo. Because, we know in canon that there is huge stuff going on with crime syndicates and all of these wars going on between crime syndicates, which actually contributes to the fact that Mon Mothma is dumb for demilitarizing the New Republic. So I would like to see them meet up all of these years later and have her be, like, in a major position in a crime syndicate. Because frankly, I'm not really interested in her with Darth Maul, because I already know how Darth Maul's story ends.
Well, I'm hoping, I'm basically hoping that, like, you know, she abandons him on Malachor and, like, takes over his organization, you know, or something along those lines. Yeah.
But I'd also love to see her interact with Leia. I think that would be super interesting.
I just love that Qi'ra is definitely her own character. Like, she became her own character for me. She wasn't just, again, an accessory to Han. And, like, I don't know, like, every new character in this film was made in service of Han, because it's a Han movie. And I thought they did, for the most part, a great job of having them fulfill those functions while also making them definitely their own characters. It's interesting. I don't know if we're going to talk about the women characters. I guess it's interesting for me to note that, like Qi'ra is, like, the female lead, and then it felt like each of roughly the three acts of the movie had their own, like, major female character, but they were sort of in succession.
Well,
like, I mean, that's an interesting structure.
So Val is sort of like the major female in, like, the first act, barely. I don't mean that insulting to her, but it was
Yeah,
like a
no,
short first
that
act.
was-
Oh, we're going
And
to talk
then-
about that in a second.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
and then L3 was like the heroine of the second act, and she had a lot more to do than Val. And then in the third act, we find out who Emcee is, and so she's
That is
kind of
also
like
true.
the second, and so she's like the secondary. Like, I mean, because she and the Cloud Riders come in the beginning, but we don't know anything about her. So like, I feel like she became like the secondary heroine in the last act of the movie.
That is true, yeah.
I mean, I definitely, so like that, I thought that was an interesting sort of like sequential thing, and I think it worked out pretty well if only like Val had been a more fleshed out character.
Okay. Yeah, we're talking about this.
Yeah, it's time.
I binge watched Westworld like 2 days before I went to go see Solo, and that just happened to be a coincidence. And when I was watching it, I was like, oh my god, I really love Maeve. Oh wait, Tandy Newton is in Solo. This is going to be awesome because she's so fantastic in Westworld. And then I go to see Solo, and it's like, oh, Val is really cool. I really like her. Oh, she's dead now. Fuck
Yeah,
you,
like,
movie.
yeah.
Yeah,
Just
it's
like,
That
I
was
don't even know
incredibly
what to
disappointing.
say. Yeah, it really was.
Like,
Like that she died alone. Like that was another thing. She died alone, and for a futile task.
I'm not even sure. Yeah, like, yeah, I don't. I feel like there's some stuff with like Beckett and Val that like I could maybe see what they were going for, but it wasn't like accomplished satisfactorily to me.
I've also seen some people online, and I've only seen the movie once, and I haven't examined it further, but I've seen some people suggest that Val is supposed to be Enfysnest's mother.
No.
Yeah, I thought that
her mother
sounded
was
weird.
a Cloud Rider. Like who?
Yeah, her
handed
mom passed it down. No.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No,
thought
you
that
know, like,
sounded-
I was matriarchal for a while, you know.
No, you know what? Like, first of all, just women in general are, can be not related to each other. And, like,
Yeah.
specifically, there can be, like, more than 2 or 3 women of color in the galaxy far, far
Wait,
away.
what?
Like,
Are
I
you
think people
kidding
saw
me?
light-skinned, yeah,
no,
I
like,
think,
I saw, like,
light-skinned black women, they're related, and like,
Yeah.
yeah. Or, like, I saw people be like, are they related? Is she, I saw someone like, what if she's really Caden Lard? What if she's related to Saw Gerrera? And I just am like, no.
Well,
like,
wasn't everybody
it's like-
going on about how Finn was going to be like Lando's kid or Mace Windu's kid, or like every black person in the galaxy has to be related to each other in some way?
how old is Caden Lard at this point? Like, anyway, in this.
yeah,
point
she's
in
not a kid. I
movie.
just was like, this
No.
person is just so stupid. Like, I'm sorry, that's mean, but like, I'm like, how stupid are you to know, first of all, that Caden Lard exists, like to know enough of extended canon to know she exists, but not smart enough to do like the math.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because like Emcee cannot be more like I know the actress is 19, but
She looked 15.
looks like
she
she's
looks like
15
a
or 16,
teenager.
Yeah.
Her character looks like
Yeah.
a teenager, and also like I'm like Caden is dark skinned.
Yeah, that too. She does not have red hair.
Like I don't know, like
Yeah, I think part of the thing with Val, I mean, I wasn't sure about, because like I said, only seen the movie once, and I hadn't really examined it further, but I could see why people would want that, because nothing had happened with her character. She was just kind of there, and then she died, and I could see why people would want some justification for her being there, because she was fucking wasted.
Yeah, I feel like too. I almost feel like Val would have survived if they hadn't made her romantically involved with Beckett.
Oh yeah,
I thought
definitely.
I don't understand why they were romantically involved. Like they were like They could have been friends. Like I don't know. It's like
before
was-
she died, I really liked their relationship as portrayed on screen, but then after she died, it retrospectively makes it a little bit meh. I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the whole thing. The whole women. And she died so that Beckett could be kind of could be mad at Han, and there could be tension in the relationship.
But it barely came up.
Yeah,
Like-
I know it was
Like if she
pointless.
died for his man pain, there wasn't a lot of like explicit man pain about her.
No.
Yeah, that's why it's so annoying. And also, I liked what we saw of the character. I was interested in this character, and like I said, Thandie Newton is a really good actress. So even with what little she had, I felt she did very well with it. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Like the meme we're talking about, though, they could have done so much better by her with the wig. Like, I loved that her hair was natural, but that was a terrible wig. And I'm like, where was this budget?
Yeah,
Like,
that wig did kind of look Party City.
I mean, bad wigs piss me off whenever there's a big budget. Like, I said, it wasn't Twilight bad as far as wigs go, but it was not a great wig. And I was just like, why? Like, I know she doesn't have that much screen time, but she's got a lot of close-ups,
Yeah.
So that was a real waste of potential with that character. And I think that they were just like, we got to get the crew down to a certain amount so that he has no choice but to keep Han and Chewie. And okay.
I guess so.
Sure.
And I guess we went right into complaining about Val, but we skipped over Beckett, who was, Han's mentor, and just he's very much a Woody Harrelson role for me. Like,
yeah.
But I thought he was okay.
Yeah, well, if we want to talk again about rhyming with the other movies, the killing of the father figure is kind of a big one there.
But it's interesting that in this one, Han is the one who does the killing, because usually like the mentor dies and it's all very tragic, but in this, Han's just like, gonna kill you before you kill me.
Parallels with his son,
Well, that is true, and it also does bring up the whole his first appearance with Greedo, him. Yeah. Oh,
but you also have the thing that was like just amazing to me, and I think this is what ties into Han's character so beautifully, is that he does it and immediately like is there for him in his death.
Yeah.
And by the way, I'm like, Woody Harrelson, I don't think ever gets enough credit for the fact that he is a really fine actor. Like, that was a really good death scene.
Yeah.
Like, that just like the fear and the sadness, like before, like I was just like, dude, that was good stuff. Like, I was super impressed with that. But like, yeah,
Agreed.
just Han running to him and holding him when he died, I was just like, Han, you just, wow.
I'll need
like,
to
I don't know,
see
that
it
was...
again, but he was also kind of comforting in his last moments, where he's like, I would have done it too.
Yeah, that was good stuff.
Yeah.
That was probably one of the more emotional beats for me. I was just like, wow, that's something you don't really see very often in stories. Do we want to talk about L3?
Hell yes, we do.
She's the best.
She's the best, yeah.
She's I've been following her as character like way in like pre-production, and so like I had these like tentative hopes about her, and then promo were like, she's a droids rights activist, and I was like, what? And I was like, oh, it's probably just like, like dressing, like, kind of like off-screen dressing about her. But no, she led a slave uprising. Like, L3 was just like everything I wanted and more. And so, yeah, like I loved, like in this regard, like I had these like really like timid but like strong expectations about Solo as a movie, and they were met and exceeded. So like, I love it. I love it.
I mean, like, this is when I did first see the movie, I've lightened up on it. I was like, really, I'm not sure how I feel about this movie, because all of this stuff that I didn't like ended up happening. And it was the death of Al and then the death of L3 that really kind of, took the wind out of my sails, because I love these characters so much. And L3 was so good. And I love what they're doing with their droids in the new movies
and new canon in general. Like it's been building up in extended canon to something like this on screen.
I had a feeling she wasn't around anymore, because of, not obviously just because she's not in the OT, but because in last
shot kind of suggested it.
I actually was wondering, I was like, if she dies in this film, which I was like 50-50 on, I was like, I wonder if they would make her one of the droid brains of the Falcons. Yeah. I was like, I don't know, like, I wasn't unhappy with her death like I was with Val's, because she died for like something
doing what she loved
in, and then she died for something, and it was like her choice, and it wasn't, and like, yes, it was like her relationship with Lando was so touching and that was moving, but it wasn't dying for his man pain. And then like, I don't know, it just enriches the fact that like they've been sort of building up in extended canon for a while that like about droids in general, but even like I suppose the droid parts of ships, and so like it enriches that, and like so like yeah, it's tragic to think about it. It's nice to imagine alternate universes, but like I am happy with what they did with her in the story. I'm not unhappy that she died. I mean, I am, but it's kind of like, oh, I'm unhappy that like Anakin fucked up and killed the younglings. And it's not like it's tragic, but also I like the story, so you know what I mean? Like,
yeah. Oh yeah, totally. Yeah, and I was just like, whenever they did that, I was just like, and it's so funny. I actually thought of you, Smalls, whenever he decides to put the brain into the Falcon. I was like, oh my god, Smalls is gonna die.
Yeah, well, you're correct. You're correct. I was trying not to like basically any time L3 did anything, I was trying not to like scream at my poor husband. But when that happened, I was trying to be like shout like a douche in the movie theater, like I knew it, it's happening.
I knew it was going to happen because obviously it happened. We already know it, but it made me judge Han for him taking the Falcon from Lando.
Oh, yeah.
Because it's like his best friend is a part of that ship, dude. Like, come on.
Yeah, that does. Yeah, there's a lot of things that make you think about the OT in different ways. Like Han's relationship with the Falcon and, his initial interactions with Leia. Yeah, I really can't wait. I wanted to before we did the podcast, but I didn't get a chance. I really want to go back and watch A New Hope and Empire Strikes Back, especially to kind of like watch the Han Leia interactions, and kind of be like, wow, how has this like changed my perspective of like Han as a person and why he's, making these decisions and why he's the way he is. Yeah, that'll be fun. Yeah, no, L3 and L3, it's interesting, like how, and I think this is just a matter of people's own perceptions, the way that people perceive how her activism is perceived in the movie. Because some people think that it's making fun. Like somebody said she was basically the Lisa Simpson character, but it's like Lisa Simpson was right.
Yeah.
With most of
and
her
just
stuff,
because
so
just because there's humor around it doesn't mean that like the narrative is treating it completely unseriously.
And it's like, some of the stuff, it's like, yeah, Lando I don't think is dismissive. He's just they have a shorthand and they have banter.
Mm-hmm. Like her saying equal rights was like a joke between them, because he knows her, because at this point he knows her so well, he knows it's a saying, and she's going to make a joke about it because.
Right.
Yeah.
I bet that if anybody else was like, told her to shut up about it or threatened her or something, he would be like, fuck you. This is important to her. And like, he treats her like a person. So.
And when he's carrying her to.
God.
Back to the ship, like everything about that moment, it's like he's carrying a person.
Yeah.
This is his friend who is dying, and
he ran back into blaster fire for her.
Yeah.
Like
this
she's
is not like an
discardable.
appliance. Yeah.
Yeah, that scene was rough.
Yeah, it was rough in a good way for me. I loved it, but I
I
cried.
Yeah, but they gotta stop killing off droids that I love.
Yeah.
Meaning that they have to stop killing off droids because I think I love all of them.
Yeah, big mood.
Really never would have guessed.
I think that R2 and C-3PO are safe in 9. They won't kill them, right?
I think so, considering how they're hemorrhaging gas right now.
Right. I thought of that. I was like, oh god. Oh my god.
So good
Before
time
we
to mention a piece of trivia. This is the first movie that 3PO and R2-D2 are not in, but Anthony Daniels is actually in it. So he plays
the Wookiee.
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
The
that
Wookiee
was a very thin
on the
Wookiee.
head.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a very thin Wookiee.
Well, they were slaves.
Yeah,
probably
true.
not well fed, although whatever.
No.
Or maybe it's the hairstylings. Who knows? Not all Wookiees look alike.
No, it's not.
I think it's telling fandom's response to L3's activism from some parts of fandom is that like L3 yells rebellion and people are like ha ha ha, but like Enfys Nest says the rebellion. Like they both like. I would have loved for Enfys Nest and L3 to meet because
they're awesome.
Yeah.
Because Enfys Nest wouldn't disrespect L3's politics.
No.
L3 probably would have joined.
The Cloud Riders. Oh my god. Yes.
Things would have been, if L3 were still alive, things would have gone a little differently. of course, because these things have ripple effects. But yeah, I just wanted to point that out that like, anyway, this movie really is a wake up call for fandom in general to like really like get that droids are people.
And I mean, they got us ready for that with Last Shot, which had a lot of stuff about droids in it. So
yeah, there's stuff there's notable things like that in the novelization of The Last Jedi, and also in The Legends of Luke Skywalker.
Yeah, definitely.
And in some of the Star Wars from a Certain Point of View books. So there's this line in as far back, there's this throwaway line in Bloodline that has really stuck with me. It's near the end where like it's been a while since I've read the book, but it's when Leia is with 3PO on that like underwater place. And anyway, she has 3PO and she's trying to get him to like unlock something, like they do in Star Wars. And 3PO is like, I'm sorry, Senator or whatever, or Princess or whatever he calls her. He's like, I'm sorry, but this is taking slightly longer than it should because the computer here is rather lonely, so it's being very chatty with me. Aww. And there's this Leia has this. It's from Leia's point of view, and Leia's like, I found the exact quote. I don't know if he's from Bloodline. I don't know if he's. Yes, Your Highness, said 3PO. I believe such data is readily available, but now that we're talking, the core is proving rather chatty. It's had no one to speak with in ever so long. Leia experienced the vaguely guilty sensation that surfaced every time she realized that droid personalities were more than programming conversational quirks. A computer core could be lonely. C-3PO could take pity on it. But that was a question for another day.
I mean, it's a big question, so I don't blame her. Like, she's kind of...
Yeah, no, it is. I was just kind of like, are you going to do me? Yeah. Like, this was early in New Canon. I was like, are you going to tease me like this, New Canon? And then it kept giving me. It kept giving me. And then it culminated in this movie, and they're going to keep going. I'm so emotional.
The new EU and the movies are taking a lot more time to consider the humanity of droids, of Wookiees, of other alien species. Like in Life Debt, we got so much of what the slave life of the Wookiees were like, which we never saw. We had always heard that's like, oh yeah, the Wookiees were slaves, and then we actually see how freaking terrible it was for them. And
finally, I'm glad we saw like slave, or I mean, I'm not glad it exists, but I'm glad we saw on-screen slavery because like, I mean, obviously Anakin and Shmi were slaves.
But they were, it was...
And I'm not going to be like, oh, it was fine. They had nice masters. That's not what I'm trying to say. But it's like this kind of like this sweatshop labor.
Yeah. And they downplayed it a lot in The Phantom Menace because it's only there for a few minutes.
Yeah, and it doesn't even, like, they sort of gloss over the fact that, like, Rey is essentially, if she's not actually a slave, she is in many ways like a sharecropper.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's that sort of economy.
Yeah.
Because she has to pay to use the water and brushes to wash her salvage, because it makes more money, or money portions, whatever. It's subsistence, like living, and it's all
a subsistence racket. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and that's just sort of glossed over. It's like, no, she's not a scavenger by choice. This is the only way to survive here, and it's all like one guy is running it and makes all the rules. Like that's not freedom in any capacity,
Yeah.
I was glad to see that on screen because it's been explicit in extended canon, but not on screen.
One thing I would like to mention about this movie that I thought it took me a second to get it, but when the movie opens up and they do, a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, and then we don't get the opening crawl because these movies don't get an opening crawl, but we do get opening text. And I'm like, this is new. It's something I have to get used to. And then there were a couple of shots in it. Particularly, there's a shot of Qi'ra when she's standing in the ship.
The yacht, yeah.
Yeah, in the yacht. And it's like, oh my god, they're cribbing from Blade Runner. Which is not a bad thing. I'm interested to know if it was Ron Howard or if it was Lord and Miller who did it. But there was a lot of homaging to Blade Runner, which
Well, yeah, the
kinda
original Blade Runner, the Rachel character in that, I mean, she was also really heavily inspired by like 30s and 40s fashion.
Yeah.
So they're drawing, in some sense, they're drawing on the same well of inspo.
The yacht itself was super Art Deco,
Yeah.
which I thought, I was just like, whoa, this is really interesting. Like, how old is this ship? Or is it brand new? And this is like, at this time, a trend. Like, what's going on? I loved that ship so much. Yeah, so I haven't seen Blade Runner, so you guys go on.
I was just going to mention it. And I think I have heard, I don't know if it was one of the directors or a producer saying that they were going to put in some homages to Harrison Ford movies that were not Star Wars. And I know there were a couple of artifacts from Indiana Jones in the yacht.
Yeah, in Droiden's like fancy room.
Yeah.
Whatever.
There was actually a lot of cool stuff in that room. Star Wars Explained did a video about all of the different Easter eggs, and there's a lot of stuff actually from the Legends, Han Solo, and Lando Calrissian adventure books. It's really cool. I mean, I'm always like pimping out Star Wars Explained because dude who does that he puts a lot of work into everything. So I suggest people check out his video on Solo.
Cool.
I want to talk about Emcee and the moment that she unmasked, because that was one of the most like pleasantly surprising moments I've experienced in the movie theater in years.
Tell us about it. Tell us about your
transcendental. Like, it was so, because I had heard, there was the whole thing with like, oh, this character's probably a woman because she was referred to as a woman in some media, but in others she wasn't, or whatever. So I figured, I was like, yeah, that'll be fun. She's a woman. And then she took her mask off and she was like a 16-year-old, like redheaded black girl. And I was just like, holy shit.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they really did that. Like, I don't know. And it was sort of one of those things, like, I just was like, wow, 13-year-old me would have loved that moment. And I was thinking about all the little mixed girls who probably saw that and were just like, all right, what? Like, that, she's a teenager for one, and she basically, it's implied that she's going to bankroll the rebellion. It was just huge. It was just like, holy shit. I don't know. I like turned to my daughter and we were just looked at each other like, what? And then I was like, I love her.
You went with your daughter. That's really cool.
Yeah, I don't know. It was just like an intensely satisfying moment for me, like in ways that like I don't think I've had and as much as I love The Last Jedi, there were some really great satisfying moments in that. Like, this was so like transcended even Star Wars as far as just like, this is huge.
It was really, really satisfying for me, but I actually, how you thought about me when the with putting L3 in the ship, I thought about you in the right after like emphasis passed.
Yeah,
April, I thought about you. I was gonna like, April's gonna die.
I did. I was just like, what? Like, because I just didn't expect it at all. Like,
I expected her to be an old badass white woman.
Yeah, I was like, she's gonna be like grizzled, like, which would have been cool to see an old woman actually like in that kind of role too. But like, I was like, wow, a teenage girl, like. That's huge, especially in terms of Star Wars, because like, there are so many teenage girl fans who don't get any credit for like being the cool fuckers that they are. And then it's just like, yeah, look at this bad motherfucker. Like, she did all this.
I think it's also really important that it is a young character, just because we see all of these heroes of the rebellion, and basically Han and Mon Mothma are like the oldest of all of them. And maybe Admiral Akbar, but like Luke and Leia and Wedge, all of these people are all teenagers. So why not have Enfys?
Yeah, Sabine, Ezra, yeah.
The rebellion is young people standing up against their elders and fighting for what they think is right, as a lot of rebellions are.
Yeah. Okay, so one last note I did want to talk about the whole issue with, I guess we can talk in general. We've sort of touched on how the female character has been treated, but like there's been some kerfuffle about the Bechdel test in this movie, and I wanted to just talk about it because I think it's dumb. Just because Like, I mean, we've discussed over and over, like, all sorts of media has discussed how, well, the Bechdel test, it's misused anyway because it's not used as Alison Bechdel originally intended it anyway. It was created as just sort of a way of saying, hey, maybe there are lesbians in this media. Like, that's really what it was about. And then it became this sort of like litmus test for feminism when it just isn't. So some people had some issues with this movie in particular, like the Qi'ra and L3 conversation. And my whole thing with it, and I've talked about it, is that it was refreshing because they weren't talking about hugely important issues, because the few times that women have talked to each other in Star Wars have been about huge things. And so it almost in this case, it's like they're being treated more like regular characters just by being able to shoot the shit about dumb shit like boys. And I think, Smalls, you brought up the fact that they're also the only two on screen. And like, there's not really, other than like with Maz and Rey, BB-8's there, but this is the only time when there's not other characters around when two women are talking.
Also, the way they're talking about men is different. They're not wittering away their own feelings about men. They're talking about how they both believe. And I also believe that L3 is right. How these guys are pining after them, which is quite different.
Yeah, that is a really good point. Like, L3, she's so hilarious in this scene too. And I'm just like, just the way she talks about it. It's like, we've got this implication that, they've had a sexual relationship, but he's more into it romantically than she is. And I'm like, that's funny and amazing.
It is funny. And then like later it's kind of,
it's true.
Right.
Yeah.
It's pretty romantic to, on some level, to run back into blaster fire for somebody and cradle them in their arms and then like press your forehead to theirs as they die. I mean, I'm a huge L3 Lando shipper, but yeah.
Yeah, and it was treated so seriously. I know there's some tittering in the audience because it is one of the things that's like, I think people are uncomfortable. They're like, oh, this is something I've not seen before, but the movie treats it seriously.
Yeah.
Like
it's
music,
humorous, but
the way, the music, the way it's like, shot, her death scene is serious and his feelings are very real.
I even appreciated that Qi'ra, when she went to like yank out her droid brain, like, I liked the way Amelia played it, where she like wasn't like, yank, sorry. She paused and was like, I'm sorry.
She wasn't disrespectful.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. But yeah, and then the conversation between Enfys Nest and Qi'ra, again, like, that's another thing about these conversations is that they're pertinent to the plot. And like with Qi'ra and L3, it's like, we need to get a read on how Qi'ra feels about Han. And L3 is the person that's going to tease that out of her because L3 is blunt.
And she's a
Lando's
woman.
Lando's not going to get that out of her, So that, it made sense. Like, we needed to know this because it is important to what's going on in the plot. But then with Enfys and Qi'ra, they're talking about Han, but it's not like, they're not talking about him in a romantic way. So I don't know. It's like people just take that.
It's just it's a very reductive way to think about like human relationships and story.
Well, I mean, also it's like
there just should. The problem is there should be more female characters.
Yeah.
Yes, female characters that interact. It's not so that those things, we aren't looking for these small moments to be like, okay, this has to like fulfill all of our desires about how women interact with each other.
It's also a 2.5-hour movie where a man's name is the title. So you can suspect that most of the interactions in that movie are going to be with or about that character.
Yeah. Something about I don't appreciate really buying it, sort of like all or nothing attitude from some quarters about how the sequel trilogy is like for the female gaze and like the anthology movies have been for fanboys, because like if that's true, I'm a fan. I personally am a fanboy as much as I am a fangirl. Like, I enjoy all those dumb quote unquote Easter eggs. I enjoy encyclopedia. Like, I enjoy going in it for the world. I'm in it to just like be in the world and make connections between them. Anyway,
did fanboys like Rogue One?
I don't know. Who are we talking about? Like, when we say fanboys, that's a whole nother issue. But
I usually think of. Yeah, I don't. It is weird because
I don't like. But I don't like it being like, oh, you're not like you're a bad feminist if you really love like Solo, which is like obviously not like a majority opinion, but you know how like dumb people are always like extra loud on the internet.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I just want to be like, yeah, I loved it. And there were movies are going to be, you know, they're not going to be like perfect beacons of like progressivism.
Yeah, especially big studio movies.
Yeah,
like because ultimately big studio movies they're trying to appeal to a wide audience.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's their thing. That's what they want to do, and because that's where the money is, and they got to make that money back.
There are a lot of things that Star Wars in the Disney era has done that surprised me because they're such big movies. Like there are things.
You know what? I just got a great idea. Like, would be a really cool, like, experimental thing to do is to throw money, like, small budget, like $20-30 million at directors to make, like, to see what they can do in that universe with a small budget.
I'd be
because
that's Star Wars movies.
I think, like, Danny Boyle has talked about before how his most creative work has been on the movies where he didn't have any money, you know? And, like, that would be so interesting to see what people do with small stories. Like, that's the kind of anthology almost that I'd like to see. And it would, like, be a good foot in the door for, like, directors, too.
Yeah.
You know? And I love how I'm like, yeah, small budget, just $20 or $30 million. But,
well, but that's...
You can't make much for that, $30 million these days. So
Yeah.
They used to call, back in the day, whenever Quentin Tarantino made Pulp Fiction, they called $1.25 million $1.25 in terms of a budget. Yeah. That was a movie might be like, yeah, we'll throw you $1.25 for this. I'm just like, that's insane. Yeah.
I like that idea, April.
Yeah, I should talk about that on Tumblr just as a dream. Just
Yeah.
be like.
Well, I think we should probably wrap this up.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think the just consensus is go see it. It's it's a fun movie. Like I honestly think with all of these movies, I'm not going to recommend or condemn any of these movies because it's such a personal thing these days. It's like, just see it and see if you like it.
Yeah.
But personally, I did enjoy it, and I will be going to see it again. Next month, we're going back to books and talking about some of the Star Wars books that we haven't yet covered, some of the ones that have come out since the last time we talked about books. And until then, may the Force be with you.
People keep talking about me, baby. Say I'm doing you wrong. Well, don't worry, no, don't worry, mama. 'Cause I'm right here at home.
So I'd like to thank April and Smalls again for joining me on that round table. I had a lot of fun talking to you guys, as I always do, and it was really nice to hear from some people who might have enjoyed Solo a little more than I did. Your enthusiasm is infectious and will make me go back and watch the movie differently the next time I see it. I mean, like I said in the round table, I didn't hate it, but I don't think I liked it as much as some people, but I really would like to, especially with what everybody has said. So what did you guys think of Solo? Please tell us. Contact us on Tumblr at trashcompactorpodcast.tumblr.com, on Twitter at swtrashpodcast. We've now got a Facebook at Trash Compactor Podcast. You can also contact us on our website, trashcompactorpodcast.com, and there's good old-fashioned email at thetrashcompactorpodcast@gmail.com. Also be sure to rate our show at iTunes and Stitcher, and check out our show merchandise on TeePublic and Redbubble. You can also check out our sister podcasts, Drag Hags, a recap of RuPaul's Drag Race, and Return to the Hellmouth, rewatching Buffy the Vampire Slayer and Angel. See you next month, and may the Force be with you.